why is this on my For You page? And then I'm like, I'm on the podcast account. We gotta fix that.
You hit one thing wrong,
and your
you,
whole
like,
For You page
like,
is
I liked a cat video. I think I
real?
liked somebody's cat video. That must have come from a conservative-ish person. And then after that, I got, like, some very, like, het content.
Hi guys, welcome to LoveCast, the Boys Love Podcast. I'm your host Pixie, and with me are my co-hosts Alexa and Kayla.
Hello.
Hey. And back with us to help us tackle a deeper dive into boys love is Aeri.
Hi.
Yay.
Thanks for having me back.
Welcome. Thanks for coming back.
For those who don't know, we did an episode with Aeri a year ago. Now. Yeah,
Wow.
it's been
It was
a
like
while.
almost
It's already
exactly
been
a
a
year
year.
ago. Close to that.
Anniversary.
We talked a lot about Fujoshis and the history behind BL and stuff back then too. And I know a lot of people said that they appreciated the insight and the view on it, because a lot of people are afraid to associate with the word Fujoshi.
Yeah.
So that was awesome.
It's a good episode. Good stuff.
Yes.
So before we jump into this, we're gonna have a little bit of tea time. This week has been interesting, to say the least.
You know the tea's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I know a lot of big creators have been making videos about this because everyone, like, you're either on one side or the other, and only one of those are right.
There's only one right side, but you know.
So the issue here is the actor Mile, who is one of the lead actors in Kin Porsche, the ongoing BL. There was a picture of him holding hands with a girl. And from what I could gather, we don't know when this picture is from, if it was before Kin Porsche or after. Not that it matters, really. So that discussion, like, needs to be laid to rest. But people are outraged that he dares to hold a woman's hand while doing a BL.
Yeah. I mean, it got to the point where Beyond Cloud, like, had to step in and make a statement and be like, you got to start respecting our actors' privacy outside of the show they're doing, or else we're going to have to, like, start stepping in and taking action of our own. But, like, it's just happens every time. And it's like, you always think that maybe it'll be better, but it never is.
No. He was just holding a woman's hand?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the assumption is that, like, that's his girlfriend or whatever. Yeah. But like we said, we don't know when the picture is from. But it's this whole, like, they shouldn't be, like, seen
together with females as long as they're doing BLs.
Yeah.
Basically,
like, while
because they're ruining the fantasy.
Oh no, a girl.
Oh no, right.
Because bi and pan don't exist.
You know,
right.
This is what I say when this kind of stuff happens.
And I mean, like, speculating about his sexuality is no. That's and what I don't understand here is why they see the girlfriend, quote unquote, as a threat. What is the real problem here? Like, you blame it on a fantasy, but, like, that's I don't get it. I'm lost for words of this one. Like, I'm just lost for words.
I have some folks in psychology, including my own therapist. But like some folks around me who will say, and it's so impossible to do this for me, but you can't apply logic where logic doesn't apply.
So true.
Yeah. And yet I'm like, no, I have to make it logical. I have to rationalize
There
it.
needs to be some logic to this.
Same. Oof.
I think there has like the BL, especially the live action scene, has fostered this whole fantasy world for the viewers for such a long time, and been encouraging it for such a long time, that there are a lot of fans that don't see the difference between fantasy and reality, and somehow think that they are entitled to keep this fantasy going because they're watching a show.
Yeah.
Psychologically, I can break down the causation, but like, like it's not difficult. It's not difficult to see why this is happening, but it's kind of like this shouldn't be happening, and people need to. What helps people the most is self-awareness. You need to have that self-awareness to understand people's own free will outside of your own, their decisions outside of your own, their motivation, gratification outside of your own. But all I know is, like, I hear that and I think of there's different socializations, which we've all heard of, we've all experienced, of competition for your own specific love interest. And then if you grow that further into the parasocial form, it threatens their fantasy.
Yeah.
And then it's almost that same aggression and competition again.
Yeah.
But applied to the parasocial.
Yeah, like they think they have to be the ones like protecting their ship from anything that might disrupt it, which to them, someone having a girlfriend or having a picture holding hands with a woman, someone, even anyone who's not their partner, basically is like a threat to their ship and the fantasy of that ship.
It's true. I mean, it's the emotional investment on the part of the fan is real. The parasocial part, the emotional investment is real. The dissonance and the distress of the fantasy being threatened is also real, but it encroaches on another person's free will, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least that's the psychology part of it.
Yeah, so we do see this all the time. What we have to like just say over and over again to people is chill. Don't like infringe on other people's privacy. Stop it.
It's the bare minimum.
Basically.
I mean, there's not much else to do.
I imagine it's so hard with real life actors. Because, you know, when it's BL or 2D illustrated, animated, when it's that, you know, it's almost like you can take this further a bit, and it doesn't hurt anyone, so to speak. It can hurt other fans, obviously, but it's not hurting. There's not a real living
real
character
person on the other side.
Yeah, but when it's an actor, that's
there are
that'd
definitely
be a
lines that
living
can be
human.
crossed.
Yeah, I do think that people tend to forget that these are actual people with actual life and outside of their acting job. And I think a lot of people are panicking about if their ship will break up. Some fans do tend to hang on to their ships even though they're obviously sunken a long time ago.
Yep.
They're holding on to that thread. Listen, I get it. I mean, I liked Marco in Attack on Titan. Spoiler alert, boy was dead in like 6 episodes. So I mean, like, that entire ship fandom of Jean Marco was based entirely off of fan-made content.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's like from a manga or anime or something, you can sort of like just pretend like it never happened and make your own story.
Yeah.
But if you're sort of pushing it on like real people, it's like you can't start controlling their lives. So yeah, but I'm glad that Beyond Cloud actually said something, because that doesn't happen
Yes.
often either. So
Yeah, it
it's
was really
sort
nice
of
to see.
on the companies to actually tell the fans when they're going overboard as well.
Yeah, it's nice to see a company actually taking steps to protect the artist to some extent, because most of the time they will just kind of like let it get to a very severe point before they say anything. So
Yeah.
the fact that, you know, Beyond Cloud kind of stepped in and said
Right
something
away.
like
Yeah.
hours after the whole thing had started to blow up is like, it says a lot compared to some of the other companies we've seen and how they handle things.
Yep. So
Or don't.
they do get a plus
don't.
from me for that.
Yeah.
I feel like companies can be agents of chaos as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
Depends on how they're
100%.
managing, yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So the idea of this episode is kind of follow up for we did a BL 101 episode talking about what is BL, where can you find it, and all that.
Very introductory kind of stuff.
So this is sort of a follow up to that, doing a little more of a deep dive into it. And it's nice to have you, Aeri, on here, because you have an insight into like the manga side of this that we don't.
I'm happy to be of service.
Nice. So for our main question, first question, what are the fandoms like? And more focused on, okay, what's the distinction between live action BL fandoms versus the classic manga, anime, novel fandoms?
2D fandom, yeah. I feel like even though we're all BL fans, I feel like the fandoms are seen as like two different entities in the way they exist, you know? Like, I feel like a lot of people kind of separate live action BL fans from fans of like manga and anime.
English.
Manga and anime and like kind of the 2D sphere. So I feel like the fans themselves kind of put that distinction there. And is there a reason for it? Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, when asked how are the fandoms different, it's about as different as neighborhoods. Like, neighborhoods are different all around. Like, it's groups of people. There's so many differences between fandom groups, between ship groups, between series groups. Like, it totally depends. I think there's even, you know, sort of groups around certain actors, you know, fans of that particular actor and everything that actor may be in.
Yep.
But when it comes to the difference between sort of the illustrated, animated side of fandom versus the live action side of fandom, you know, when it comes to Thai BL, that seems to be a very strong sort of group on its own. And then from my experience with Japanese drama, BL dramas, I find a lot of overlap. I find like I see the same fans who are in the illustrated fandom in the BL, when it comes to Japanese. When it comes to the Japanese BL, live BL, I see the same fans in both groups. You also see overlap because sometimes you get an actor for a live who's also been a voice actor.
Voice actor. Okay.
So you get some overlap there as well. I think that has a lot to do with how the Japanese entertainment industry is sort of using who they've got, basically. And also they really like Japanese, that whole industry, the entertainment industry, they really like to play up their populars, their favorites. Yeah. So they'll be like, hey, we know you did this voice acting. Would you like to do some actual acting, like live acting? And you'll find that sometimes they switch over and do that, and they'll go back and forth depending. So I guess, I don't know, it's almost like in the way that there's overlap in the entertainment industry, you see overlap with fans either following their favorite actors around or favorite artists, favorite animation studios. It just sort of depends. But I see a lot of the same people all across the board. So when it comes to distinctions between fandoms, when it comes to the Japanese side of things, well, yeah, let me rephrase that. When it comes to the Western fans of Japanese things, not so much the Japanese fandom, Japanese people. Although I think there's overlap there as well, but sometimes I think there's more distinctive neighborhoods with them. When it comes to the Western fandom, they're hungry, they're thirsty. They'll take what they can get, and you'll see them across the board. So like I think I had a viral tweet at some point. It was it's because I just found it off of TikTok. It was a live that made sort of poked fun at BL novels, and it was like this dude who'd like walk through his town.
World of BL.
Yeah, the world of BL, yeah, that one. And he would walk through his town and see like BL moments.
I remember when you went viral.
There's
for
a season 2 of that one, actually, that just released.
Yes, like that's some of what you get. It becomes comedic, but it also like breaks fourth wall. It's really funny. But I saw a lot of people who were watching that who were also in animated fandoms. And
you know, that's an interesting case, because I know, like, as live action fans, we knew about this live action for a really, really long time before it came out. And I noticed afterwards it came out, suddenly like the manga and anime people started coming in and just like, what? It's there? So it was kind of weird for me, like knowing for such a long time that it's there, and suddenly having all of these manga fans getting all nostalgic and excited about seeing all these tropes and stuff like that they're used to.
Yeah.
So that was like sort of
live action fans are a dedicated group, so like that's not surprising, because when you're a dedicated group in live action, you know about all the live action before like someone who's not in that fandom knows. So you're like more fluent in it.
Yeah, we have like dedicated like Twitter accounts and stuff that tweet out the second something is announced. Like, it's getting harder, though, because the market is starting to get a little bit saturated.
Oversaturated.
So
that's
it's
like
getting
kind
harder.
of how I feel like, Aeri, you were saying that, like, the kind of 2D animation side of the fandom is kind of hungry for whatever they can get. I feel like on the live action side, we're kind of on the opposite end of that now, for at least a lot of people. I know myself personally, like, there is so much happening now that I almost feel like, I feel
watch
like
anything.
I have to take a step back and really pick and choose like what I want to watch, because the market is getting so oversaturated. And like 4 or 5 years ago, like, I was picking up and watching any BL I could find that was being subtitled and being made accessible to us. But like now I'm like, there's too much. Like, I need you guys to stop, take a second, spend some time. Sorry, there's
ghosts
banging going on. Sorry. Spend some time, like, making sure you're putting out a quality product, and then, like, I'll watch it if it takes a little bit longer. And, you know, I feel like that's definitely a distinction, because when you're waiting for, like, a manga or something that is being translated from another language and waiting for that international release, you kind of don't get as much... Oh, I just lost the word I was looking for. You don't get as much coming at you as often as you do with, like, the live BL side of things, where it's like there's 50 shows a week and then 3 more new ones coming the next week, you know?
It makes me think of, like, literally 10 years ago, and the Tumblrs dedicated to BL Live, and then also BL drama CDs. I used to follow those, and there was some great stuff, but I remember you had to have those dedicated accounts in order to sort of organize what was available for fans looking for it. The organization and the fans who stood up and or stepped up and said, here, I'll put this stuff together, I'll run this account, and it became a major source for other fans. I remember those, and you really needed that. Now, like you said, oversaturated.
Yeah, I think like the market getting like oversaturated isn't like a bad thing either, because it will sort out the bad stuff from the good. Before, like, we watched everything, and they just like sort of pumped it out a period, and a lot of it was really bad.
True.
So at least we're getting like more quality stuff, quality shows now, and it shows on the views they're getting, so that's good.
I suppose it's like which would you rather have, loads of choice or just like trying to
Quality
find
choice.
things that don't update often? You're trying to find the right download for it.
Yeah, that's a struggle. That's the struggle. Yeah.
One thing I think is really different from the 2D fandoms and the live action ones is the controversies that or the fights rather that happens, the discussions. Like I know in the Fujoshi world, there's not a lot of people that actually resonate with that term in the live action scene because they're not as connected to Japan as the manga. And I see that like the discussions going on in the two different fandoms are so different for those two. I do know, like, I've seen some of like the arguments going in the Fujoshi fandom space, which have surprised me somewhat because I haven't like seen it that type of arguments in the live action scene.
What arguments are y'all getting in the live action thing? Because obviously I'm not over there a lot. I'm a visitor. Like I pop in occasionally, but I'm not there constantly. So it's like, what are the arguments you're getting? And that would be so fascinating to compare what y'all are getting versus like what's popping up in the 2D realm.
So the main argument is if you're like watching live action, some people will say that you're fetishizing gay men.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before. We've kind of had that discussion.
A lot.
Yeah. I feel like the live action fandom, like at this point, I feel like they just argue about everything. Like, I feel like every day, especially in the online space, I'm coming into some kind of new argument about, like, something so small. And I think that's what's frustrating. And something I was kind of thinking about is, I think when your fandom exists mainly in an online forum, which a lot of the BL fandom does, especially for the last 2.5 years or so, you can kind of get wrapped up in being chronically online. And so like these arguments just go around and around in circles, and it's always like, you're canceled if you're watching this, if you're doing this person, you know, it's like that. Those kind of arguments are the kind of stuff I always see in the live action fandom these days, and it's just like the most weird small things that I feel like should not be an issue in the grand scheme of things, but they become an issue.
Like for an example of the most petty shit I've seen in the fandom is there's this actor or these two actors, a ship that were in Until We Meet Again, Kao and Coearth, and Kao got a part in Lovely Writer and got a new ship with Up, and they were doing this event. And they put Kao and Up on the poster together and Coearth on the other side of the poster, and the fans rioted that his picture wasn't next to Coearth's picture.
Oh god.
Like, it was a huge thing in the fandom. People were rioting over this. Like, they were nasty.
Yeah. Like boycotting going to the event too.
Yeah.
I'm recognizing a difference here, and this is probably true for 2D versus live. In live, you have canon content that is showing the shipping, the relationships, the fallouts, the lack of someone standing next to someone else. You have that real drama. And you know what? In 2D, it's almost entirely fan-made drama. We're not, you know, I don't think I've ever seen 2D fandom argue over someone not being in the flyer or someone not being next to someone in the flyer. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that because they're not giving it to us.
Yeah.
You know, if BL is BL, usually there is a main couple. Sometimes there might be a tryst. Sometimes there might be a triangle, you know, but it's sort of, we already know about that.
Who the couple is.
And I don't see too many arguments
Yeah.
over that. I don't see that kind of, not when it comes to BL series, but when it comes to fan shipping and fan made, that is where all of the battles and war are taking place, entirely fan made.
Yeah, it's fascinating, like how you can be so passionate about something that is fantasy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
but at the same time, in the live action, these characters that these people played, they're fantasy as well. Like that ship, like the first ship with these two actors, that was a fantasy. They were just acting a role. So these fandoms in live action that are shipping these real people, they're shipping a fantasy in their own heads because it's not actually real. They're just projecting it onto real people.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to say it, because again, this is a fictional character, but because it involves a real human, they're projecting that onto their personal lives as well, because it still looks like the same character. That is the face of the character. That's the face of their fictional fantasy. And I'm just kind of like, oh, we get into tricky territory there.
Yeah, and there's like this element of them, like we've talked about this before. I think we also talked about this when you were on with us before, Aeri, of like them almost wanting that the line between fantasy and reality to be blurred, because the fan service is what sells. So the harder it is for the fans to tell the difference between the fantasy they're seeing in the TV show, the fantasy that the actors are putting on when they're doing fan service, and you know who they are as real people. That's kind of like what the companies use to keep their pockets filled with money, basically, because
you were saying, y'all said the companies were pushing that too.
Yeah. Oh, it's like almost all company driven. Like all of the fan service and all the sponsorships and all this kind of stuff, it all comes back to like the company putting more money in their pocket and wanting to blur that fantasy, that line, so they can continue to make money off of it.
Yeah.
Also, just as a side note, I just noticed your cat.
Oh, yeah. The window's open, so she's having a great time sniffing and watching the birds.
Yeah, she's the star of the show, really.
I was like, I see it. I want to pet.
Yeah, she's a little baby. She's
I mean,
queen.
for anyone who's new to the like live action scene, if you want to know some of like the issues that usually go around in fandoms and with the ships and stuff like that, you can basically just go watch Lovely Writer.
Yeah.
Honestly,
okay.
Yes.
They portray pretty well what happens.
Oh gosh.
And they do it in a really interesting way, because it doesn't feel like they're sort of attacking the stuff. They're sort of just highlighting it in a sort of discreet way, but at the same time it's pretty obvious what they're doing.
Okay, so like introduction to
awareness.
live fandom. Go watch Lovely Writer.
Watch Lovely Writer. It's actually a really good show too. Like there's actually like a ship and everything and a story and all that. It's actually pretty good. So
Yeah.
but it was a game when it came out, like spot the controversy, spot the fights.
Oh my god. It keeps you busy. All I know is, with the 2D side of things, I'm sitting here thinking about it, like, what are the big arguments right now? Well, it's a huge space, and you're not all in the same community. Even though it's all the 2D community, it's more of like a 2D city, and there's a lot of communities within the city. But within the communities, there's always a ship war. There's always a ship war. Always. It's just that they're applying social issues to them to try and validate their perspectives in order to sort of win over whoever the opposition is. That's a big thing. The big thing right now is anti-Fujoshi. anti-fujoshi, the male loving male argument, which gets they're saying, you know, obviously there's gosh, how do I say this? There's some different voices coming through, but most of them are one side. It's you shouldn't watch or consume any BL type male loving male content if you're not a male. And they're even pushing that strongly, excluding there's more too, and it's specifically, it's not gay. You notice I'm not saying gay, I'm saying male loving male, because they're excluding bi, they're excluding pan, so they're excluding different sexualities, but they're also excluding different identities.
Yeah.
So non-binary people will be like, hey, like me.
Well, what am I supposed to watch then?
We're like, oh, I'm non-binary, you know? And I've literally gotten some answers where they'll say, oh, well, you should just watch non-binary things. I'm like, that doesn't exist.
Where?
We don't have that
Who is
content.
making
That's
that?
why we kind of sit in both areas. And then you get transphobic stuff popping up, and femphobia is actually a really big conversation piece that I'll be doing at some panels at FujoCon and with some other folks, and because there's a lot of stuff. So it seems to be anti-fujoshi, also just not anti-fujoshi, just, you know, anti anyone who's watching this content who's not cis
we've
male.
experienced some of that too.
Yeah,
I mean, my problem with the people who tell me, like, as a straight cis woman, that I can't watch anything that involves male relationship or women relationship. Like, if I, as a straight woman, how am I gonna learn and sort of get the knowledge I need if I'm not, like, watching these things? Like, gay people and other, they grow up watching straight shows
all the time.
all the time.
That's all we had, yeah.
That's all we got, and we're like, I feel empty.
Yeah, and knowledge is, like, the greatest thing for combating misinformation and phobia and all of that, because you're afraid of something you don't know. But if you know it, then you won't have that same fear, because it won't be so foreign to you. So, because it's like before I came into the live action scene, I didn't like have any friends there that were non-binary or gay or anything like that. I didn't know shit. And I know that from doing, like, being in the fandom and especially doing this podcast and talking to so many people, I've, like, evolved my own thoughts and opinions, and noticed that before I did have a privileged mindset that I wasn't aware of, but that's my own fault for not actually seeking out to be, like, aware of it, seeking out that knowledge. But if you're gonna, like, gatekeep the gay experience, then how the fuck are people gonna know?
I've had someone say to me once, of course it was online, it's always online, which there's something Alexa said about being online, and I was like, that you don't have people coming up to you in person being like, I have a problem with your t-shirt, it's not my ship, you know, you don't have that happening. You, like, it's they only do it online because it's a megaphone for you to hide back in a little gremlin hole where you're not going to receive much of a consequence and just yell whatever you want to yell, which brings out the absolute worst in people, with almost zero accountability. So, I mean, the online space magnifies all of that. But I've had somebody come up to me and basically say, you know, like, I shouldn't watch this stuff, and try to gatekeep it. And I was like, look, you know, when I was growing up, we didn't get anything. There wasn't, queer presence was not normalized, still barely normalized in media. Like, we have much more now in a lot of different forms, not just what we're talking about. but it's still not normalized. It's still sort of a different piece of media, a commodity, a different thing from the default. And to a point where if you're watching something, if you're watching a show, and it's always default straight, default straight, default straight, default cis, and then, you know, something queer or non-cis pops up, and you're like, oh, I can spot it, and it everyone's still doing that. And the more we normalize it, the less it's gonna feel so
Abnormal.
divorced from quote the default. And so when people try to gatekeep or even just tell me, you know, oh, I don't think straight people should watch stuff, I'll say, well, I think they should, because if more of them did, it would be more normalized, and we'd have less of this strong reaction to it even being in their face or existing in front of them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they're always like, no, they'll fetishize us. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. Watching something is not fetishizing. That's an entirely different act.
Yeah. I think there's such a focus these days about like corrupting kids with the gay agenda, and I'm just sitting here, but you've been corrupting them with the straight agenda for their entire lives. So,
and yet,
I mean,
people are still
can
gay.
we just get a balance, maybe?
Right. Balance. How about both agendas?
Promote the agendas equally.
Like the why not both gif. Like
yeah. No, but like a little seriously, but the whole thing that, like, especially in America right now with the Don't Say Gay bill going on, what I inherently notice about the arguments from the side that, oh, you shouldn't like talk to kids about this, is that they're so often sexualizing gay people. It's
they're acting
always
like it's all about sex.
Yeah. It's always, and every argument I've seen online, and that it blends into the BL space as well, because often the people who are yelling at fetishizing, it's like it's always about sex. Why are you always
like, you just want to watch two dudes kissing kind of
sex
thing? Yeah.
And yet they'll put on they'll give their babies onesies and t-shirts that say, I'm a ladies man, and he's like less than a year old, or like I make a good wife or something, or I'm wife material, or like it's like they're sexualizing babies. Or when parents will be like, oh, they're boyfriend and girlfriend if there's two babies
and they're like
age. 3. And it's like, look, this is classic projection. You're saying, I don't want you to influence my kids to be gay, but you've been influencing your kids to be straight from the start.
Yeah.
Also, as a point to the Don't Say Gay bill and all of this, I've seen this before. I'm from Georgia, and I know y'all have heard this, and I was from Atlanta, but then I got moved to a very conservative place by the time I was 11. And I'm a literal case study. I'm a literal case study of how Don't Say Gay doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a conservative place where no one could be gay. A chaplain who supported his Episcopal church for allowing gay, lesbian clergy members was fired from my school. Like,
wow.
If you were gay, you were run out of town. No one was out. No one could be gay. And yet, here I am. It didn't stop me. So you don't stop the gay.
This week there has been like a really huge focus in Norway about because it's the 50th anniversary of them abolishing a law that said that being gay was illegal.
Oh yeah.
It's only 50 years ago that like it was literally illegal to be gay.
Yo.
And I mean, people were still gay when it was illegal. Like,
my uncle.
It's not a choice.
73. My uncle is 73, so he was closeted until he was about 28, I think, somewhere in there, late 20s. and he was born in 48. So, like, yeah, he was a young man when it was still illegal, and then he came out eventually, I think, probably when it was safer, but he also came out in an urban area. But it still wasn't coming out. It wasn't coming out to his business associates. It was just that he divorced his wife, and his immediately family knew there was a reason. It was because he didn't like women. Yeah. And so, like, that was still it. That was the extent. And even then, the family didn't have pride. They were just like, oh, okay, this is our little secret.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yep.
Yeah, that was a different
don't
world.
ask, don't tell type situation.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the world has moved forward, but it's going far too slow. And I do see these BLs as a way for us to normalize things in society. And while I do think, like, some years ago, in very recent years as well, like, some BLs are questionable as to, like, the actual representation of a gay relationship, to say the least.
Yeah.
But
there's definitely a number. Yeah,
it's been getting better, and there's been, like, real discussions about stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very generational, if you've noticed.
Yeah.
Portrayals of gay, bi, queer male relationships, the portrayals in Japanese BL are very generational. So when people now, when young fans now say, oh, well, yaoi, and it's true, was called yaoi at one point, because it was an evolution of the genre. The genre was evolving from fan-made comics to romance to sexual content that then evolved into BL, but BL was both romance and it was just the definition, the distinction of BL was just the male loving male distinction. It's not just sex, it's also romance. But so, like, it was just an evolution, but back in the roots of it all around that time, you know, there was some really questionable content. Sometimes it was stuff that was like, okay, well, that just doesn't freaking make sense. But like corn cobs. But like, but also there was a big lack of consent theme. Yeah. There was a big lack of lube scene. And what I hate to tell these young fans is, I don't know how to tell you this, but that was a thing. That was this existed in real life. It's actually a pretty generational portrayal. And now we're like, oh, that's not so good. But back then, that was actually not that uncommon. Yeah. So it's not that women creators, because that's another topic of conversation, is what is the gender of the creator in the 2D area, 2D fandom. Same. They're like, oh, well, the gender of the creator who made this. My favorite argument. I love this series, but I hate that it was created by a fujoshi. And I'm like, how does make sense?
What does that even mean?
Misogynistic.
But, like, they're blaming their gender or just even their perceived identity, because some of these people are not women. They just they're not out because it hurts their industry in Japan. But they'll perceive their gender as a reflection of what they're writing. I'm like, no. Sometimes, a lack of the lived experience shows, but sometimes it's also very generational. Some of these stories are dated, and they reflect what was common then. It's hard to explain that. They don't want to listen.
Yeah, but I you can, like, take that to, like, everyday life back in the days.
That's true.
Where women have been oppressed, like, men were in control and women didn't have a lot to say about things. And these days, women are speaking up on a larger scale. And I think communities that you get, like, in BL and K-pop and all this is, like, creating safe spaces for women to, like, gather and sort of agree. And also, I think that there's a more open discussion and more visibility for queer people is actually helping the conversation about equality for women and men. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's oh my god, so many thoughts. Um, there's a lot to be said about the treatment towards women and also the concept of femphobia. I hope I'm saying that right, because it was actually introduced to me by Crystal Marie, who was talking about it recently.
Yeah.
Nice.
And she was sort of covering it with me, and I was like, you know, I didn't even really have the term for it. I was describing
Yeah.
it, but I didn't have the word, and I didn't look into
Right.
it as much as she had. But there's a lot of it, and I think there's an interesting narrative that's floating through sort of our younger generations, because this is what's happening. The older generations aren't as visceral, I think, as some of the younger generations, because they're growing up at a way more sort of volatile time in society, and that's reflected, it's going to be reflected in their behavior and how they feel as well. And I'm not excusing anything, but I'm saying they're definitely growing up in a very difficult time that's not worse than ours, it's just different.
Difficult.
It's a different kind
difficult
of time.
A different difficult.
Yeah, different, difficult, exactly. Diff. And, it's they also have social media, which then magnifies, amplifies everything. But the thing with the femphobia that's so wild is that if you stop and you have to, that's why I try to put out fairly neutral content that's not neutral in what I'm saying, but I'm not being like, shut up, children, but like at the same time, I'm being like, let me try to explain something to you as an old person. Is that women progressed. We got a little bit further. We saw women get a little bit further in society. However, it's primarily white women that got further, climbing up the backs of black women, climbing up the backs of women of color. They're still way suffering. And if you look, what I do, I swear to God, I'm going to create a rubric. I threaten to regularly. I'm going to create a scale of that observes and measures reaction to consumers of controversial content. Being the controversial content would be targeted to be, let's say, BL type male loving male content. Okay, you have white and or POC male watching this content. There seems to be no reaction. Okay. That's cis, let me put it that way. White trans male watching this content doesn't seem to have much of a reaction. POC trans male watching the content, there's a bigger reaction. There's a bigger reaction. White women watching the content, a little bit more of a reaction. Women of color watching the content, they get slapped in the face.
Yeah.
It is literally, I've seen white women, they receive it. Yeah, they receive it. But I've seen a bigger, almost nuclear type size reaction to women of color watching this content. It's everything is everything is integrated. It involves race. It involves perceived identity, perceived sexuality. It's the gatekeeping I'm seeing that I have literally been told. I am very trans mask, middle of the road, everything. I am a genderless void. This is my existence. But I am also white. I have mixed ethnicity, but I'm white. My race is white. And then I'm perceived to be, there's some trans mask stuff going in there, but I'm also kind of chonky. Like, I got some titties. and what happens here is someone sees me and they're like, you're not trans mask enough. You're not mask enough to watch this. You're too, there's too much here physically that could be femme. Things they list out. Your name is too femme. What? Your body looks too femme to me. What? Like, and they will look for anything to say, no, gatekeeping. And I'm just kind of like, y'all, and this goes to an extent where, like, one of the other videos that I had that went viral that I find TikToks, I'm like, look at this, and then I regret it later. But like, was a black woman saying, like, super into that male content, and her reaction was way bigger that she received than I've ever received. And it's just, you really have to look at all of it. So yeah, women have progressed some. That doesn't mean you can hate on them now. It doesn't mean they're fully privileged, but you're treating all of them all of them, all the women figures that you're perceiving, to be equally privileged. And it's just not the case. It's never been the case. It's still not the case. Yeah, we progress some. And I feel like the younger generation treats that as if now that means they're privileged enough that they can be said, oh, you're totally privileged and you're taking advantage of everything. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a really long. But it's a primary issue I see generationally, because I find older fans don't have that same perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
So yes. The femphobia is real, but there's multiple layers to it, and they think the femphobia is justified, and it's never been justified. It's just never been justified.
Yeah. How do you feel like ageism goes into the mix?
You know, the ageism too. But the thing is the ageism, it's ridiculous, but you know what? I remember seeing it when I was their age. Yeah. I remember them being like, oh, you're old. But I think we had a little bit more respect because the elders were providing us with content.
Yeah.
You know, live journal days. All my fandom senior, I just knew mostly older people when I was on live journal, and I was a wee babe.
Same.
And yeah, like the older senior members of fandom were providing us the content because they knew Japanese. They were translating for us. They were scanlating for us.
Yeah.
They were doing all that. Now the babies don't actually need us.
Yeah.
And I think that might also.
So they're like, "Why are
it.
you here?"
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of fans who don't actually understand where they're like getting the content from. They're like, I see that often in the K-pop space that like translators are getting attacked because they didn't translate something correctly or missed something or something like that. They get branded as like dismember hater or anti or whatever. And I think like the people who are attacking them don't understand that like they are getting this content because of those translators. And I they have this privilege that they aren't understanding, because there's so many places on the internet that they can get this information now.
I guess like what would we call it, like a resource-based privilege. Like they don't need us all the time to get a lot of these things, except it is really mostly adults who are providing even the company's level of content. But yeah, I remember the free fandom, the translator thing was going on there too. People would translate things differently, and what would pop up in the free anime, the swimming anime. Yeah, people would pop up and say, well, you translated that because you like this ship. So you translated it wrong. You're just trying to, and it's like, you know, there is nothing stopping you from learning Japanese. There are a lot of programs out here.
If you want it to be translated a certain way, do it yourself.
I mean, it's just...
And like the older fans are also the people buying the merch and buying a lot of stuff. So I do think like there is a privilege there that the younger generations aren't as aware of, because they're a little bit spoiled with the internet.
A little bit.
It's wild. Their generation, and I'm saying like young Z and down, whatever we're getting to, wherever that is, age-wise, I don't fucking know. But like,
I don't know.
the young ones coming up behind us, like what a wild generation sort of experience they're having, because they're privileged in that they have a lot of stuff we did not have access to at all. We had to scrounge. I was just talking about this on my VTubing last night with other friends, and we were nostalgia tanking and like talking about like the torrents where you know now you wait like, I don't know, a couple of hours for something to show up, and back then we'd have to wait like 4 days for a torrent to get one episode that was like 3 weeks air to go or something on a good day. Like, that was the norm. But you know, in a way, they have this privilege of access and availability. And at the same time, I've noticed one thing, and economically, I think they're somewhat deprived, because I see so many of them at a younger age trying to monetize their fandom. So like the fan art, the fanfic, they're monetizing in a way we never did.
Yeah.
We were writing freely, you know, like, hey, I wrote this, you know, 3-book novel on Prince of Tennis ship on LiveJournal. Please enjoy. I printed that shit out.
That hit me so hard.
I know.
I feel attacked.
I'm like, I was that person who's like, I'm gonna print this all out on my school's printer after hours and put it in a binder so I have a literal physical fanfic book. Yeah. No, that was me. But they're a lot of them I see, like, they're creating content, but at the same time they're trying to monetize it. And you know, I think there's an economic sort of aspect to that as well. So it's like, it's not that they're strange, but what a strange generation to be growing up in.
Yeah.
It seems so wildly different from ours. Where they have that availability privilege, but they also seem to be monetizing everything, and I think that comes out of economic need as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it shows a lot in, like, a lot of surveys done around countries where you get, like, kids saying that on top of their, like, list of which job they want, you have like YouTube influencer.
Yeah.
Like, it does, like, paint a picture of how the world has changed.
It really does. And we all know this as adults now, but when we go to monetize something, there's a level of stress that comes with it.
Yeah.
You know, being seen, standing out from the other, quote, competition or other providers, vendors, if you will, standing out, providing a good quality product.
It's running a
let's look at
business.
fan art.
You're running a
it's running a business. But
Like,
they're
it's-
teenagers.
Yeah.
Like, there's teenagers trying to get into the business area, and I'm like, we weren't doing that. And it's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that we weren't doing that. We were leisurely enjoying our stuff. Also, we were trying to get any that we could, so we didn't have the availability. But, like, we were leisurely enjoying it. It was a hobby. It was relaxing.
I mean, for me, it was sort of therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I couldn't talk to anyone, and it was like taboo. Like,
You retreated into this.
Yeah.
You retreated into it. It was a safe place for you to enjoy yourself with other people like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know
And
exactly
honestly,
what
it
that
still
was.
is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, with an added bit of spice. The teeth of the younger generation.
Yeah.
But I don't see them doing that as much. I really don't. Like, they're enjoying themselves. I see all the wild little cosplay TikToks of, like, teenagers running around at cons and stuff. But, like, there's also this aspect of, like, there's the monetization. There's the heightened sensitivity that sort of social media brings. Really, it's stimulating, it's overstimulating, and it magnifies everything. They also grew up with this whole political identity. The political identity is much stronger for their generation. And I don't mean Democrat, Republican, but I mean, like, where you align and social issues that you see reflected in the media that you're consuming.
Yeah.
And then we don't do that. Do you watch Free and go, these boys are oppressed? You know, you don't see that. But, like, maybe sexually oppressed, but, like, we don't view this way. We don't view things this way, but they are. A lot of them are like, it's almost like a psychological dissonance of sorts.
Yeah.
So there's some different
you sort
stuff
of see,
going
like,
on.
this activist behavior with what they see in BL, and I find it really interesting because there's been a lot of discussion about Tharn type, like, always, because you do have, like, some non-con, and it's questionable content, to say the least, but there's also, like, it's just entertainment, right? So you have this, like, for me, I enjoy Tharn type. I can still acknowledge what's wrong with Tharn type, but I do still enjoy it, and I don't feel the need to, like, go out there and be, like, hardcore activist, like, on TikTok yelling at people because they enjoy Tharn type or defend Tharn type.
Yeah.
Which you see a lot.
what they're consuming intricately tied with this identity, this activist, this social identity they've developed for themselves. And for us, when we see this happening, we're like, that's very much performative activism. It's a performance to us, and then to them, they believe what they're doing, everything they do comes with this sort of intricately tied to them social identity. So, like, I'm not going to watch it because I don't support this behavior. And meanwhile, I see something non-con, and I'm like, not into it. And then they're like, that's it. It's not, it's like, I don't like it. It's not for me. That's not against non-con. But, like, I'm not into it. So I just go watch something that I like versus someone much younger, 10, 15 years younger than me, will see non-con and be like, I have started a petition to have this episode removed from the series to change the world sort of mentality.
Yeah, I do see that a lot of younger people sort of have this whole stick about they need to change the world.
That's a big generational thing.
Everyone needs to change the world. And most of the time, they're not changing anything. It's more just like yelling into a void, annoying people. But yeah, I mean, it is a good thing that like they're actively thinking. But I think sometimes the motivation is more of like the gratification of attention rather than actual change.
It's like mix the idea of overly active activism thoughts, performative activism, let's say, plus social media, which amplifies all of it. And I sit here and I watch young fans, talk about why this ship must be pedophilic because there's a couple of years age difference, and concentrate on that versus racism in cosplay or something. You know, there's real issues we need to address: racism in fanfic, racism in cosplay. These are real issues that we should spend our energy on versus versus your ship is
if that age gap is too much or not.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we do see that in live action as well. There's a lot of focus about actors being far apart in age, or the characters in like the
child coded, I think is something I hear.
Well, there was a lot of like Cutie Pie is airing right now, and there was a lot before Cutie Pie came out. There was a lot of talk about these two characters because there is an age difference. How much of an age difference?
Like 7. It's like 20 and 27 or something like that.
Gotcha.
So before it came out, people were like, ew. This is like disgusting. Like people were going ham. Some people, not everyone, some people were going ham that this age difference was a thing. And the side couple, also the actors have an age difference there. So that was also an issue.
Interesting.
But what's interesting to me here is like after the show aired, and people have sort of calmed down about it. Although the facts haven't changed, the plot hasn't changed, the age hasn't changed, but people just, the show is good, so suddenly people don't feel like yelling about it.
All I know is you have to have that age difference for daddy content. Daddy content in BL is wildly popular. It's super popular everywhere. You're going to have that age difference in order to achieve daddy content.
Yeah.
CD.
I think there's this element of like just thinking about the Cutie Pie example of like not knowing how something is going to be portrayed. That kind of makes people leery, I guess is the right word. And, then they actually get the content and they realize this is being handled in a way that's like not, I don't know what they were expecting it to be. Like, I don't know, like that Leanne was going to be like a creeper, like, creeping on this like, I don't know what they expected. But then they realize, oh, this isn't how it's actually being portrayed. So like they kind of calm down about it. But I guess there is this like tendency to be mad about things before they've even happened and before you even know how the outcome is going to be, like this preemptive anger and outrage over things that can definitely be an issue and take up a lot of space in the fandom.
I was literally thinking of somebody I knew who there was one BL series that came out, and they're like, well, I don't like this kind of thing, so, I just want to state my stance on this first, and then they ended up loving it. But like, it's almost like somebody wants to put that disclaimer out there that I am not to be judged for anything if I actually like this, but I'm just saying I don't like it right now.
I don't. Yeah.
It's funny to watch.
I mean, a lot of people, what happens in BL now is a lot of people are looking for things to be outraged about, because they see they get a lot more traction for being outraged. They get a lot more gratification by people giving them attention, and that's sort of where all the controversies happen. And
I can literally say from a social media study stance that anything perceived to be negative on the negative side of neutral will actually catch more traction than the positive side of neutral. Because you could say something positive, but if it has a dramatic negative twist to it, so like, for example, the anti-Fujoshi stuff. Like, if you say, there's no reason to be anti-Fujoshi, or anti-Fujoshi don't understand what Fujoshi actually means, this is all true. This is stuff that's true, and it's positive sounding and message to us, but if you're saying the words that catch negative side of SEO, it catches more traction.
Yeah.
It's literally what happens.
Yeah.
Social media is cursed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I do know that there's a lot of people that just steer clear of social media just because of this, especially Twitter. Twitter can be a hellhole.
Twitter and TikTok is coming right up behind Twitter, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm not
TikTok
on there
is
extensively,
worse.
but yeah,
TikTok
comments I've heard are pretty bad.
Yeah, you just don't read the comments on things.
Yeah, no.
Save yourself the pain.
Yeah. I like the queer side of TikTok. They're usually it's usually a really nice place to be at, which is why I usually go on the LoveCast account instead of my own. Because the content is so much better.
The algorithm's a lot nicer. Yeah.
Curate your For You page. Yeah.
That's like my oh my gosh. I have my personal TikTok account, and then I have one for my VTubing, which I'm so rarely on. But they look wildly different.
Yeah.
The algorithms are real different. Like on mine, it's like there's no one who looks like me on my personal one, and it's like you have a mix of cats and making fun, like laughing at your own trauma over social issues.
Yeah.
That's what's on that. And then like the VTubing one is very kind of non-diverse. A lot of VTubers. I'm just like, I gotta get on that one, fix my algorithm.
Yeah, you gotta curate it. Yeah, I try and sometimes like go through and like scroll on the LoveCast one just to like just like certain stuff and like, make sure I kind of get things sorted out into a space that we wanted to be on. It's like my own personal one is like perfection, but sometimes like if I mix up which one I'm on, I'm like, why is this on my For You page? And then I'm like, I'm on the podcast account. We gotta fix that.
You hit one thing wrong,
and your whole
like,
For You page is
I liked a cat
like,
video. I think I liked somebody's cat video. That must have come from a conservative-ish person. And then after that, I got like some very like het content.
Yeah.
Like seriously
like,
het content. I was like, I'm on the wrong side. Get me off. Get me off.
Save me.
Like, it's sensitive. It's real sensitive. But I suppose that's how it can make your algorithm so personalized. Yeah. Is how sensitive it is. It's a little too sensitive.
Yeah.
A little too sensitive sometimes, definitely.
Pitfalls of social media.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And each one is so different, so you're trying to figure, like, God, Instagram isn't Instagram's just a barren wasteland sometimes.
Now. It's just the people are just on there to sell stuff and promote products.
Yeah, exactly. It's because Facebook took it over.
Zuckerberg. He's the root of everything.
Ruined everything. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I find it very interesting how different, like, the social media people from different country use, or different fandoms use. I mean, like, if you look at, like, predominantly, like, Asian countries, they tend to stick to, like, Facebook. It's huge there. But, like, here, Facebook is, like, an old people thing. Like, people don't use Facebook anymore. Like, I'm
All
only
my
on
Japanese friends
Facebook
had
to
Facebooks,
promote
and I was
my
like, you use
business.
Twitter was my saving grace for Japan, because they use Twitter.
You're right. Yeah, and I noticed a lot of the actors and models and stuff in Thailand, especially, are on Instagram
Is
because
huge.
that's
It's
where
like it's like
work.
where they do like business transactions. Like if you watch a Thai BL and you watch the opening credits, a lot of the times their Instagram handle is in the opening credits, because like you go on there and you get contacted for work, and you have your manager's information, and like it's huge. It's like a business zone for them, Instagram. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
I always thought that was
though.
super interesting when I first like started watching Thai BL.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's really interesting. I wonder where the Don May fandom exists. Because they're sort of the other big up-and-coming player. This is so funny. It's almost like major world religions. You have Thai BL Live, you have Japanese BL 2D, and now we're getting, like, the Chinese Dame. You got, like,
Three
Korean...
separate entities.
What is the comic site for the Korean comics? I swear it's Korean. It's online. There's a couple of really big ones that I believe are based in Korea, and they're for online webcomics.
There's one that's called just like Webtoon, which might be based in Korea. Yeah,
That's one of them. Yeah, it's like major religions coming up here.
Yeah.
Which one are you? What do you subscribe to?
Or you could be like me and try and subscribe to all of them and
Exactly.
just be in chaos all of the time.
Dabble in all of them.
I do find it really interesting how, like, the 2D fandoms are very connected to Japan, while the live action are more connected to Thailand, and not at all Japan. Like, most BL live action fans haven't watched BL content from Japan because it's so hard to get any.
You know, it's almost like they capitalize on it a bit. Like, Thailand, like, really ran with the live BL dramas, and they did good. Like, they put out a lot. They put their effort into it. It's where, like, Japan put less effort into the BL dramas.
Yeah, especially pushing it out into the international scene. I know Thailand, when they noticed they had an international audience, they pivoted and just like, okay, let's give it to everyone.
Let's make this accessible,
I guess, like, South Korea capitalized on the whole webtoons thing. Because I know so many people who love those web-based comics.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they seem to be on a Korean sort of server or forum.
Yeah.
And then you have, like, Don May, which is, like, this free-floating, beautiful, artistic version of everything else. The major players.
The mysterious entity.
So, as, like, a closing thing, do we, like, have something that we feel is predominantly good about BL and that is predominantly bad? Like, just Cliff Notes kind of thing, not like an essay.
You know what, BL, and I say this as the umbrella BL, including Thai live, you know, Dame, Japanese, including all of this, there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of variety, and it's gaining popularity in all of these different areas. I know, like, Don May is super on the rise. Thai live actions have been extremely popular. You know, there's always Japanese content coming out that fans will then morph into what they want it to be. There's something for everybody, and there's also just having more of it is not a bad thing. I know, like, the markets can definitely get oversaturated until we want something new or something that really sticks out, but at the same time, I believe it's a good thing. The more we have the closer we get towards normalization, especially as popular as it all is, especially with younger and younger and younger generations, you know, we were lacking a bit. We didn't have a lot, but now there's just so much we can't even watch it all. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's just going to keep pushing us in that normalization to where, like, you know, the older generations are going to die out eventually. So, like, all we're going to be left with is people who watch this. So, woo!
Yeah, will soon take over, as it was always intended to.
Exactly. The bad side of it, though, is definitely the conversations or lack thereof that are happening in fandom spaces online, particularly in virtual spaces where people are trying to just they have ship wars. I mean, a lot of what you see is actually just ship wars, and they're trying to disguise it as something else to validate their side of the ship war. But then you also have people who are saying all this anti-Fujoshi stuff, and that's just it's not helpful. It's not true. It's not based in anything true. They don't know what they're talking about half the time. They've heard one thing via no real resource. Just somebody said, "Oh yeah,
Someone said something.
yaoi is non-consensual violent sex," which is something that's been said to me. I have heard that. There are people who believe that. They don't know the truth. They don't know what yaoi was. They don't know that it was fan-based comics that had absolutely nothing to do with sex. They don't know that BL can have romance. They just think that it's sex. And then they think the consumers of it are basically straight males who watch lesbian pornography. They're just
that's like what they equate us to.
They're equating us to this, and it's illogical. It's not based in fact, and we're gonna have to find a way to deal with that in those spaces.
They are comparing us to what they already know, which is men watching lesbian porn
or fetishizing women in real life.
Yeah. So they're sort of taking, okay, women are watching two men in a romance or whatever, and they think it's the same thing because they can't fathom anything else. Because they don't care to actually look into it. They don't care to listen. So, yeah.
There's also, there's people who come up and say one of two things. I hear both at times. One is, sometimes I'll see young people who come up and say, well, I'm a trans male and I have had I've had one or two yaoi fangirls fetishize me, and I'm like, that stuff may happen, but you cannot apply it to a whole. I mean, that's the natural course. It's really bad that happens, and it does happen. Some people don't respect boundaries. That is what's missing. Is that they're overstepping personal boundaries. The other side of this is, I've heard somebody come up to me, a queer male, and say, oh, well, watching it is just fetishizing. I'm like, I think you are missing the point of fetishizing. That's got to be applied to real people. Yeah, that's what fetishizing is.
I think the worst problem here is gatekeeping.
The gatekeeping is pretty bad.
Yeah, because people are not going to understand if you don't show them, or they are not allowed to see. Like, no one should feel uncomfortable watching BLs, no matter what gender they are or sexuality or whatever. It shouldn't matter. And like, someone projecting their beliefs on someone else, like, don't just assume.
Yeah, that's the
like, talk to people. Like, I see the people getting accused of fetishizing all the time, and it's honestly, I'm so sick of seeing people talking about it at all, because it's usually the arguments are they make no sense, and they show so little understanding to what we actually are doing. So, but yeah, stop gatekeeping, basically.
It's pretty bad. I'm wondering if it'll morph again into something else, because I know, given like around 2016, the big one was pedophilic. Like, they were saying that was sort of the big commentary was, oh, you like anime about high schoolers, you have a ship That's pedophilic. And that was the big thing. Now it's sort of switched over the next, 5 years into fetishizing. That's the big commentary. And I'm like, what's next? What are we running through next?
What term are we going to throw around next?
We'll see.
Right. It's almost like, oh my god, I hate to equate it to this, but like I raised my niece. She is oh my god, how old is my niece now? She's 22. She was born when I was quite young though, so like we're closer as sisters. But like no, I remember when she was a toddler, she learned a word and then she'd say it 20 times. Mm-hmm. It's like pate, 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 pate. You stick to a word and you get obsessed with it, and that's what it makes me think of a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh god, please stop.
Yeah. Yes.
So hopefully we'll see what the next thing is, but for now it's trying to navigate this space, and if somebody accuses you of being something that you're not and it seems highly illogical and irrational, just be like, look, I'm not, simply. And if you are gonna harass me or continue to call me these things, I'm just gonna use that block button.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's all about finding your safe space. So if you can find like a place where you feel safe to talk about this with friends or online in communities like in Discords.
The kitty has something to say about it.
Melody wanted the word.
She wanted the last word. Yeah, she was like,
she's
can't
like,
wrap up without
Mom, aren't you done yet?
She's like, did you say something about ships? Does that involve fish?
No, it's because you said pate, and she was like,
oh my god,
it's dinner time. It's dinner time.
So that's it for our episode this week. We want to know how you got into BL. Leave a comment on YouTube or tag us on social media. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Sharing this episode with your friends really helps us out. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Aeri.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey guys, welcome to LoveCast. Sorry. Hey guys, welcome. I can't speak today. I'm so tired. Sorry. Okay. Wait. I apparently need the manuscript right in front of my face because of this.